here. So it's first day in London, and honestly this trip has been a long time coming. The bus is about to arrive. So it's the bus stop right outside my hostel. It's really convenient, to be honest. The weather's a bit sunnier. There you go, that's the bus. All I have to do is tap my card, and the next stop is the British Museum. Well, it's about a 25-minute ride from my hostel in Southwark to here in central London. And from here it's a 7-minute walk to the British Museum. The streets here are more walkable, but if you're used to driving everywhere, it's probably not your thing. The roads are narrow, the curves are way too sharp, and you gotta be careful not to wander into bus or cycling lanes, or else you'll have to pay heavy fines. Funny thing is that you will hardly see anyone jaywalking around here. And speaking of the bus ride, I actually left an hour early, thinking that, hey, maybe I'll face a delay or something. But here's the good thing about London. Even if you miss one bus, chances are you will get another heading in the same direction just in a matter of 2 or 3 minutes, 5 minutes at maximum. Mind if you're planning a trip to the UK in summer, most of the places don't have air conditioning, not in public transportation, not restaurants, and even most of the hotels, they don't have any air conditioning. I wish someone had told me this earlier, because last night, just around 2 in the morning, I woke up sweating and thought, hey, the AC must be broken. So I walked down to the reception desk to complain, and the person over there just told me that, hey, we don't have ACs over here. And so it turns out that most people here still rely on natural forms of ventilation, like they'll just open a window. I mean, it all makes sense because historically cities like London have been built for milder climates. Climate change has made the summers a lot warmer in the last few years. In fact, they are even forecasting a heat wave in the next few days. So we're almost there. That building at the end of the road is the British Museum. And on both sides of the street, you'll mostly notice cafes. So there are plenty of spots to grab a quick coffee before heading in. Or in case if you're someone like me who is here almost 40 minutes early before the museum opens, you can just, grab a seat and wait. few interesting details I would like to share about the museum. First being that it's one of the most oldest museums of the world. Second, it has around 8.2 million artifacts, but only 1% of them are on display. And most importantly, there's no entry fee for this. It's free of cost for everyone, so you don't have to be a student. Neither you have to have a membership to enter the museum, except for the exhibitions. If you're planning to attend one of the special exhibitions that they have seasonally, in that case you may need to pay some fee for membership. But except for that, the museum's free for everyone. But in any case scenario, I would highly recommend you to get a ticket from their website, because that would really help you avoid long lines. It is usually for those who are trying to enter the museum without tickets, although you're not required to buy one, but yes, buying one would really help you save time with the entrance and security checks. So right before we enter the museum, there's this cool gift shop that you can check out. Now the artifacts here are not the real artifacts. The resemblance is uncanny, but no, these are all replicas of some of the most famous artifacts you will see inside the museum. And yes, they can be quite expensive. But regardless, this section is still worth the look. So as you can see here, there's the replica, and right next to it there's a note which will tell you about the origins of the replica or the culture that it's associated with it. There are many other things. You will see jewelry, you will see clothing, some other cool stuff like the helmet that's right there, board games, ceramics, and many other things. A bit pricey, but like I said, the resemblance is just uncanny. Quick bit of history as we walk up. The museum started with this guy, Sir Henry Sloane. He was born in Ireland. No, he wasn't British. So Hans Sloane spent his life collecting books, plants, artifacts, pretty much everything. And when he died in 1753, the British Parliament brought it all of his collection, and a few years later, in 1759, the British Museum opened. And since then the collection's just blown up, all thanks to donations, purchases, and yeah, pretty much most of it came from Britain's colonial ventures in places like Africa, India, the Pacific. In last few years, many museums across Europe and in the United States have made attempts to return artifacts back to their origin countries to recompensate for crimes committed during colonialism. However, when it comes to the British Museum, unfortunately there are laws that does not allow the museum to return artifacts. But this entire building has like 4 floors and 60 galleries, so I'd highly recommend you get a map of this place and this guide desk over here. Won't cost you more than £2. And right across the guide desk on the right there's a souvenir store, which is much bigger than we passed up here, and it pretty much wraps around the whole entrance. And right on the other side there's also a cafe if you grab a quick bite or something. As you can see right there, there's a special exhibition until October 10th which features Indian artifacts. So if you're in this part of town, please make sure to check it out. Okay, now we are into the Egyptian section of the museum, which so far can be regarded as one of the largest one. And it's also turns out to be one of the most crowded areas so far. I mean, it's a Thursday afternoon right now, and yet you will see tourists, local Londoners, and also students with school trips hanging around. Over here, as you can see, this is a sarcophagus, also called a coffin. But surprisingly, all the hieroglyphs, or the Egyptian writing system that they used to have back then in ancient Egypt, it's still intact. That just proves how well preserved this is. Now, a lot of stories you hear about the so-called curses of the pharaohs actually came from something much more real, which is Mercury. So what priests in ancient Egypt did was that they often covered the chambers with it because the coffins were covered in gold. And that in turn made them prime targets for robbery, whether during invasions from the north or by the common people. So yes, grave robbing was a serious problem back then, and it's something that even predates colonialism. So out of curiosity, I just saw some stuff numbers about the total number of Egyptian artifacts they have, and they told me that the museum has around 100,000 artifacts, and the actual number could be higher. Let's not forget that the museum has a total of 8 million artifacts from all across the world. But walking through here, you will see statues, busts, clay tablets, pottery, pretty much everything from each era of ancient Egypt, whether it be the Old Kingdom, the New Kingdom, the Ptolemaic period, and even the Roman era. And right next to the Egyptian section, you will see the museum's second largest section, which is dedicated to the ancient Mesopotamia, a civilization that actually predated ancient Egypt. And as you can see here, these are inscriptions that were taken apart from the walls of temples and palaces in Mesopotamian city-states like Ur, Lagash, which are now in modern-day Iraq and Syria. And each inscription tells us a different story. However, most are about military conquests. And as you can see, if I zoom in, you'll notice cuneiform inscriptions on these carvings. And if I'm correct, this could be one of the earliest remnants of the Akkadian language, which was one of the oldest language systems in the region. The museum even has a separate room dedicated only to these carvings. Now, one of the reasons why they have decided to preserve them in a separate room is because, as you can see here, most of them are ripped apart. Most of them are damaged. And you'll see these carvings on both sides of the room, and to make sure that no one touches them, the museum has really placed these movement sensitive barriers, so if you try touching them, it will trigger off an alarm and security will show up. Alright guys, so I ran into a situation. So I spent another hour checking out the rest of the museum, but both my GoPro battery and my phone battery gave up on me, so I couldn't record more. But we spent another hour and a half walking through different sections of the museum, such as the ancient Greece, Roman Empire, China, South Asia, Korea, and Latin America. The area of Covent Gardens that we are in right now, it's called the Apple Market, and it's one of the most iconic parts of this neighborhood. As you can see here, the roads are paved with stones, which is because this area in particular dates all the way back to the 17th century, also known as the Victorian era.
Another one, thank you so much. This is success. I will do this. Apply me.
The street trade also have a reputation for performers. In fact, we even came across one.
Wait. Ladies and gentlemen.
Now, pivoting back to the apple market. So why is it called Apple Market? Well, back in the 1600s, this area was actually a fruit and vegetable market. Farmers would bring in apples, pears, and all kinds of fresh produce, and that's where the name comes from. The market actually started in 1654 during the time of Charles II. I can't even imagine Londoners back then strolling through the streets with baskets, picking up fresh fruits and flowers. But this market became the city's main fruit and vegetable market for centuries. But by the 1970s, things changed. The fruit and vegetable vendors moved elsewhere. I mean, you can still find some of them over here, but Apple Market, for most of the part, became a growing hub for arts, crafts, and antiques. And today, most of the stalls that once belonged to the fruits and vegetable vendors have been taken over by shopping outlets, cafes, and restaurants. What fascinates me the most about this area is how it blends in history with modern life. On one side you got this beautiful old Victorian age buildings. We have this cobblestone roads that date back all the way back to 16th, 17th century. And on the other hand you have all these modern day cafes, shops, restaurants, and even street performers that keep the neighborhood alive in some sort of way.
Damn, 1888 में rebuild करियो. इधर आने से
बस में भी जवा
बस में क्या वहीं थी
सो
बस में क्या क्या आई थी
Welcome to the London Underground. It's my first time catching a metro in London, and we're right now heading to the Big Ben. So far, my impressions, the station is way down underground, which is a bit different from New York. Back there, you just have to walk one level, and you'll immediately get to the platform. But just like New York, no air conditioning either. However, the platforms are way cleaner, and from what my friend here has told me, these stations never get flooded when it rains, which is definitely a plus. Right. So let's hop on and I'll see you at the Big Ben. So we just got off the train at the station called Westminster. It kind of reminds me of the Penn Station back in New York. Because I was looking at some of the signs back there, and it turns out that there are lots of connections they can actually catch from the station. Plus you will also see plenty of shops around here. Here we are at the Big Ben, which is one of the most iconic structures of London. And right behind Big Ben you will see the Palace of Westminster, which is basically the British Parliament.
Wait, that's a parliament, right? Huh? Parliament.
The Palace of Westminster and Big Ben actually came up around the same time in mid-1800s. After the Great Fire of 1834, which pretty much wiped out the old Parliament, they started rebuilding in early 1840s. And so the Palace of Westminster and Clock Tower were both built in the Gothic style. We are now approaching the Westminster Bridge, which connects the Westminster region with Waterloo, which is right across the bridge. And just across the street is a statue of Queen Boudica. She was a leader of an ancient British Iceni tribe and is well known for rebelling against the Roman Empire.
I've activated the pass now, it's gonna expire in 10 days. Huh? 60.
Once you cross the Westminster Bridge, all you have to do is to climb down the steps, and that will lead you straight to the London Eye. Just right there. This was supposed to be the last thing of my today's itinerary. The thing is, it's 5 right now, and although London Eye stays open until 8:30, it's usually congested, so I wasn't able to get the tickets on the spot, because the general rule of the thumb over here is that you have to get your tickets in advance, like 24 hours before you actually get here. So the whole ticketing mess leaves me with no choice but to see if I can squeeze in the London Eye later on trip. But for now, yeah, that pretty much wraps up day 1 in London. For tomorrow, I'm heading out to the outskirts of the city, see some spots. So stay tuned. See you later.